Chapter 116. I really don't understand, Gongzi. Why do you insist on joining us? Given the Wang clan's identity and status, this risk is simply too great. Liu Zhizhang took in a deep breath. For someone like Wang Chong who knew of the alchemist's secret, he had no choice but to let him go. Since he couldn't kill him, he could only think of a way to recruit him. Even though the alchemist's secret organization rarely opened to strangers and rarely accepted outsiders, it wasn't as if there was no chance at all. Gongzi, if you insist on joining us, there's nothing I can do. If you just want to obtain some pills, there's a chance right now. However, the price is too high. You can consider it yourself. Liu Zhizhang sighed. What chance? Speak. Wang Chang's eyes lit up and he blurted out. It wasn't in vain that he had spent so much time. There was still a chance. The alchemist organizations in the royal palace and the various king's residences have always had some quotas for outsiders. These quotas can't be considered as true buyers, nor can they be considered as members of our organization. At most, they can only be considered as external partners. These partners are known as shadows. The number of shadows has always been fixed, but recently, there has been a vacancy. I can find a way to apply for you. However, the price of each shadow is too high, and it might be beyond your imagination. Are you sure that you really need them? Liu Zhizhang said with uncertainty. How much does it cost to become a shadow? Wang Chong asked. 200,000 gold. Liu Zhizhang said seriously. Upon hearing those words, even Wang Chang's expression changed slightly. He knew that the threshold to enter the alchemist organization was very high, but Wang Chong didn't expect it to be this high. 200,000 gold was an unbearable price for the majority of powers, even the great clans. For many people, even if the alchemist was willing to recruit them, they might not be able to afford the price of 200,000 gold taels. If Wang Chong had not discovered the business opportunity in Hyderabad and made a fortune from it, even if he had known about the alchemist's secret organization and the existence of Liu Zhizhang, he would not have been able to make use of it. This was not something that ordinary people could come into contact with or use. These groups were formed by the alchemist of the imperial palace and the king's mansions. The threshold was so high that it was enough to make many people flinch. Furthermore, this 200,000 is only a qualification, not the price of the pill. If you need to buy medicinal pills, you'll have to pay extra. Liu Zhizhang's voice traveled into his ears. Moreover, the price of the elixir purchased with the identity of the dark shadow far exceeds the true price of the elixir. Even so, will you consider it? The internal rules of the alchemist's secret organization were far more careful and prudent than the outside world could imagine. Every single pill had a serial number, and this was something that even six-fingered Zhang couldn't do anything about. Once he was discovered, what awaited him was probably a fate worse than death. Those great powers that were inextricably linked with the alchemist were enough to put him beyond redemption. Based on what Liu Zhizhang said, he would absolutely not recommend him to do so. A resolute voice came into his ears. What? Liu Zhizhang's body trembled violently as he looked at Wang Chong in front of him in shock. I said yes. Wang Chong chuckled and repeated his words without the slightest hesitation. 200,000. And if they find any problems, they can cancel your qualification at any time. Are you going to agree to this? Liu Zhizhang said in surprise. Of course I'm going to agree. Why not? Wang Chong smiled. If it was him in his previous life, he would definitely not agree to 200,000 gold taels. This was a sky-high price. Not only would he be buying a qualification to enter the outer circle, he could even cancel it at any time. But in this life, Wang Chong knew that regardless of how many gold taels he had, it would only be a pile of metal that could not be consumed in the future. What he should be considering was how to maximize the benefits of this pile of metal. 200,000 gold taels. I can pass it to you tomorrow. On top of that, 30,000 gold taels is for your hard work. Shanhai and Meng Long will pass it to you. Wang Chong faintly smiled. Liu Zhizhang was speechless. Wang Chong's reaction was completely different from what he had expected. Ever since he came into contact with Wang Chong, Liu Zhizhang realized that he had underestimated this young man. Since Gongzi has already made up your mind, I won't say anything more. Give me a few days and I'll settle it for you. Also, since this is the first time you become a shadow, you can make a request. Tell us what pill you want. As long as it isn't too excessive or the pill you want is too expensive, we will try our best to satisfy your request. Have you thought about it? What kind of pill do you want? Liu Zhizhang asked. Tiger bone rejuvenation pill. I see, I understand. Liu Zhizhang was taken aback for a moment before nodding his head. Once I receive any news, I will inform Gongzi as soon as possible. Liu Zhizhang quickly took his leave. Disappearing along with him was another 230,000 gold taels. Liu Zhizhang's efficiency far exceeded Wang Chang's expectations. On the second night, Liu Zhizhang sent someone to deliver a message. The 200,000 gold taels had been received. Wang Chang's qualification to become a shadow had been officially approved. As a shadow, he couldn't actively contact the alchemist. Only the alchemist could contact the shadow. In addition, each shadow could only purchase a maximum of 3 pills a month. But in a year, they couldn't purchase less than 6 pills. Otherwise, they would be disqualified. The first reason was to limit the number of pills a shadow could purchase. The second was to test the financial strength of a shadow. If a shadow couldn't even purchase 6 pills a year, he would be disqualified. I've finally succeeded. Nearly 300,000 gold taels in exchange for such a small token. Wang Chong thought to himself as he looked at the purple gold token in front of him. It was 2 fingers wide and exquisitely made. On one side of the token, there was a picture of a purple alchemy fire, accompanied by some black shadows. This was the symbol of the shadow. In his previous life, although Wang Chong had heard of this secret organization, this was the first time he had come into contact with it. Furthermore, he was only an outer member and could be disqualified at any time. The alchemist organization's threshold was so high and the vetting was so strict that it made one's hair stand on end. Luckily, it's not like I've gained nothing. In the study, Wang Chang's gaze shifted to a brocade box on the table. A thick fragrance of pills wafted out from the box. It was different from the body-tempering pills and bone-tempering pills that Wang Chong had swallowed before. This fragrance was incomparably thick. Furthermore, if one looked closely, they could even see traces of purple mist coming out from the box. These pills lingered around the box but didn't dissipate. Tiger Bone Small Rejuvenating Pill. Even in his previous life, it was a famous and well-known name. Other than the top alchemist in the royal palace and the king's residences, it would be very difficult to find it anywhere else. Bang! Wang Chong opened the brocade box and took out a round pill that was emitting a purple aura. With a grunt, he swallowed it. In an instant, a strong wind blew in the study. The roar of a ferocious tiger could be heard faintly in the air. After that, everything returned to silence. After an unknown period of time, a series of crackling sounds erupted from within Wang Chong's body. I've finally succeeded. Wang Chong suddenly stood up from the ground. His eyes opened wide, emitting a shocking ray of light. An aura that was much stronger than before burst out from his body. This aura was fierce, violent, dignified, and arrogant, like a ferocious tiger that was waiting to pounce. Tiger bone level. Once one's root bone was upgraded to this level, one's strength and endurance would be greatly improved. It would no longer be like the panther bone level. Although a single thrust was extremely fast, it could quickly deplete a martial artist's energy. A tiger's pursuit would never stop after 100 meters. It would continue to pursue relentlessly. Although a tiger bone level martial artist was still not comparable to a real ferocious tiger, and their bones were not as sturdy, it was still a great improvement. Wang Chong could feel that his body was filled with energy. Compared to before, it had obviously increased by quite a bit. Now, I can finally start cultivating the force of the barbaric god. Wang Chong let out a long sigh of relief in his heart. Although it was only the most basic tiger bone level 1, it was enough for Wang Chong to cultivate the force of the barbaric god. The mental cultivation method of the force of the barbaric god flashed across Wang Chong's mind. Then, he sat down with his legs crossed and remained motionless. This was the first step of the force of the barbaric god, called qi kneading. While Wang Chong was concentrating on cultivating the force of the barbaric god, in the imperial court of the Tang dynasty, the matter of consort Taizhen had become a hot topic. Almost all the civil and military officials were involved. No matter what, I must stop His Majesty. Early in the morning, the King of Song slammed his palm on the table and stood up abruptly. The matter of consort Taizhen had reached the most critical moment. However, the development in the imperial court had exceeded the King of Song's expectation. Despite the remonstrations from so many officials and the numerous letters, His Majesty seemed to have made up his mind and completely ignored their advice. In the main hall, whenever an official remonstrated, the Holy Emperor's face would turn livid and frighteningly ugly. On the matter of consort Taizhen, the Holy Emperor had displayed an extraordinarily firm attitude. This had never happened before. In the past, although His Majesty had disagreed, he would never express his stance easily. However, this time, things seemed to be completely different. Lu Ting, get ready. During the morning court session, help me contact the other officials. We will submit a joint letter together. No matter what, we must persuade His Majesty to change his mind. Yes, Your Highness. Lu Ting responded, but his eyes were filled with worry. The current situation in the imperial court was becoming more and more disadvantageous to the King of Song, but the King of Song seemed to be unaware of it. The matter of consort Taizhen was related to the official's reputation and integrity. On this point, even Lu Ting could not persuade him. The imperial edict has arrived. Just as the King of Song was neatly dressed and preparing to enter the palace to attend the morning court session, something strange happened. Just as the King of Song walked to the door, an extremely sharp voice suddenly came from outside. In the blink of an eye, a middle-aged eunuch with a pale face and gray hair, dressed like a palace eunuch with an indescribable feminine aura, walked in from outside, holding a golden scroll in his hand. As the middle-aged eunuch walked in, he cast a sidelong glance at the King of Song, his eyes sinister and cold. Eunuch you! Seeing this eunuch, the King of Song's expression changed, and he immediately bowed. The King of Song, hear the imperial edict. In accordance with the will of the heavens, the imperial edict states, the King of Song is worried about national affairs and has overworked himself. He is hereby ordered to rest at home. There is no need for him to attend today's morning court session. End of the imperial edict. Rumble. Chapter 117. Whoosh. A gust of wind blew past. Dark clouds hung low in the sky, and it was dark. The King of Song's mood was as gloomy as the dark clouds above his head. Recuperate at home was a simple phrase, but it was a chasm that stood between him and the imperial court. This was not an order, nor did it say that he had done anything wrong. It was just a kind and concerned advice that excluded him from the court. The emperor's decree cannot be disobeyed. No matter how much preparation he had made and how many plans he had made, they were all for naught at this moment. I didn't expect. The King of Song clenched his fists and slowly closed his eyes. His heart was cold. He had been in the court for more than 20 years, and the emperor and his officials knew each other well. However, this was the first time that the King of Song had encountered such an imperial edict. The content of the imperial edict was simple, without any unnecessary embellishments. From this imperial edict, the King of Song felt a chill. The Holy Emperor had clearly expressed his attitude in this way. The King of Song, receive the imperial edict. Eunuch Yu raised the imperial edict high and looked at the King of Song coldly. Thank you, Eunuch Yu. The King of Song respectfully received the imperial edict from Eunuch Yu. Holding the imperial edict in his hand, the King of Song sat in the main hall for a whole day in a daze. The King of Song, receive the imperial edict. Eunuch Yu smiled coldly and handed over the imperial edict in his hand. This was the second day that the King of Song had received such an imperial edict. The content had not changed a single word. The third day. The fourth day. In the beginning, the King of Song was still ambitious. He wanted to contact the officials and make a big move in the court to stop the Holy Emperor. However, after several days, the King of Song's heart had turned cold. Your Highness, this is not good. Lu Ting stood by his side, looking worried. This is already the 5th day. His Majesty seems to be determined not to let you attend court. Without you in charge of the Ministry of Justice, the Imperial Court, and the Ministry of War, the current situation is very bad. It's still fine in the royal court. There's Lord Wang Zhen to oversee the proceedings. However, there were a lot of trivial matters in the Ministry of Justice and the Ministry of War that needed someone to take care of. In His Imperial Highness's absence, someone else would automatically take over His Imperial Highness's responsibilities. At present, the Prince of Qi's side was already making large movements, dispatching someone to take over His Imperial Highness's responsibilities. If this continues, Your Highness will slowly be ostracized by Prince Qi. Although the King of Song couldn't attend court, Lu Ting could. However, he was merely a grand scholar and had no real power in the imperial court. In this regard, he could only watch and worry helplessly. I know. The King of Song sat alone in the main hall, looking absent-minded. The real situation was far worse than what Lu Ting had described. The King of Song knew that His Majesty was using this method to slowly ostracize him from the imperial court. This was different from any other time. This time, the King of Song felt a cold and hard heart. In his 20-odd years of being a politician, this was the first time the King of Song had lost his power in the imperial court. The imperial edict has arrived. Eunuch Yu held the imperial edict in his hands and strode forward with his head held high. His signature mocking smile hung on his lips as he arrived as promised. By the will of the heavens, the Emperor declares, the King of Song has overworked himself by worrying about the affairs of the nation. He is hereby ordered to rest at home and not to attend court without my decree. Hereby, rumble. Hearing this, the expressions of the King of Song and Lu Ting changed drastically. This imperial edict was almost identical to the one before, just that a few words were added, not to attend court without my decree. It was just a few simple words, but the meaning was completely different from before. How could this be? Lu Ting widened his eyes and looked at Eunuch Yu in shock. As expected, as expected. I knew it would be like this. I knew it would be like this. The King of Song's heart turned cold, as if he had received a huge blow. Without Jin's decree, he is not allowed to attend the court. These simple words were the harshest blow to King Song. Although the edict did not point out the fault of the King of Song, nor did it strip him of his title, these few simple words were equivalent to effectively expelling the King of Song from the imperial court. From now on, without the Holy Emperor's decree, the King of Song was not allowed to attend court. Not to mention participate in the imperial court. Your Highness, receive the edict. Eunuch Yu's face was pale. He held the imperial edict with one hand and handed it over with a mocking smile. A eunuch in the palace actually dared to mock a prince of the royal family. This was more than just audacious. If not for the Holy Emperor's decree, how would he dare to do this? Thank you, Eunuch Yu. The King of Song's face was ashen as he respectfully received the imperial edict from Eunuch Yu's hands. Your Highness, the King of Song, forgive me for speaking out of turn, but regarding the matter of Consort Taizhen, you're on your own. Eunuch Yu said this with a sneer, then turned around and left. If the master was unhappy, the servant would naturally be unhappy as well. Right now, everyone in the palace knew that the number one person who opposed the Holy Emperor and Consort Taizhen being together was the King of Song, Xianxia. The eunuchs in the palace were bound by a common enemy. Eunuch Yu naturally wouldn't be friendly toward the King of Song either. After Eunuch Yu left, the great hall fell into a long silence. Looking at the imperial edict in the King of Song's hands, everyone's heart felt heavy. Everyone knew that the most prestigious Supreme Harmony Palace, in the Central Plains, would be out of reach for the King of Song from now on. Unless he received a decree from the Holy Emperor, he would no longer have the right to step foot into it. Lu Ting looked at the King of Song by the side, his heart filled with worry. No one had expected that the matter of Consort Taizhen would develop to such an extent. Originally, everyone thought that their greatest enemies were the Yao clan and King Qi, who supported Consort Taizhen. As long as they defeated them in the court battle, they would be able to change His Majesty's mind. But at this moment, everyone realized that their true opponent had always been one person, and that was the current Holy Emperor. And the Yao clan and King Qi were merely obeying the Emperor's decree. Unexpected, unexpected. The King of Song slumped in the Great Hall. He seemed to have suffered a huge blow. Being ostracized in the royal court and losing his authority wasn't the biggest blow to the King of Song. What dealt the King of Song the biggest blow was that the wise and resourceful king of the Tang dynasty, whom he had always regarded as the wisest emperor in the history of the Tang dynasty, was actually going to ostracize him from the royal court for the sake of a woman. This was what the King of Song couldn't accept. Even though losing his authority in the royal court was unbearable, it was still difficult for him to turn around and support consort Taizhen. This matter concerned the loyalty of an emperor and the reputation of an official. It was impossible for the King of Song to turn around and support consort Taizhen. It seems like that lad has guessed correctly. Suddenly, there was a long sigh, and Lu Ting's familiar voice sounded in the King of Song's ears. "Academic Lu, what do you mean by this?" The King of Song raised his head and asked in astonishment. Lu Ting's words came out of nowhere, and there was no end to it either. No one knew what he meant. "Your Highness, do you still remember Wang Yan's third son, Wang Chong?" Lu Ting shook his head. There was an indescribable feeling in his voice. "I do. Didn't I meet him at the Four Quarters Embassy? Why would Academic Lu bring this up?" The King of Song asked in astonishment. He couldn't understand why Lu Ting would bring up that child at such a time. "Back then, when we were leaving, I paid special attention to him. I have a feeling that that child knew that we would fail." Lu Ting said frankly. "How is that possible?" The King of Song abruptly straightened his body with a look of disbelief on his face. The matters in the royal court were treacherous, and it involved many aspects. Until the very last moment, even officials like them who had been immersed in politics for decades wouldn't know the outcome. How could a teenager like him be so certain of the outcome? Lu Ting only smiled and didn't say anything. Lu Ting's personality was one of those who loved to guide talented juniors. And Wang Chong's capability wasn't just limited to talent. Probably, even Wang Chong himself didn't know that Lu Ting had paid much more attention to him than he had imagined. "Your Highness, do you still remember that he asked about the matter of consort Taizhen? Now that I think about it, that child was actually trying to dissuade us. Perhaps it was because he knew that we wouldn't succeed. Thus, he decided to use another method." Lu Ting said. The King of Song was taken aback, and a grim expression finally appeared on his face. If that child was really as Lu Ting said, then he was truly extraordinary. Thinking about it carefully, back then, Wang Chong did seem to be trying to dissuade him. It was just that in that situation, whether it was himself or Lu Ting, it was impossible for them to listen. "Academic Lu, what do you mean? Do you want me to turn around and support consort Taizhen?" The King of Song's expression turned ugly. "Your Highness, I don't want you to change your attitude and support consort Taizhen. But don't you think that child had hidden meaning behind his words? He kept hinting that he wanted us to meet Prince Shou, Li Mao. I have a feeling that he knows something. His Majesty's attitude towards the matter of consort Taizhen is too strange. It's completely different from before. I feel that maybe we really should go look for Prince Shou. Perhaps we can find out something different." Lu Ting said. The King of Song was silent, and his eyes revealed a grim expression. If it was in the past, he wouldn't have even thought about Lu Ting's words. But after so many things had happened, and after receiving 5 imperial edicts, the King of Song's attitude had changed greatly. The Holy Emperor's attitude was too strange. The King of Song had never thought that he would go this far for a woman. In the past, the King of Song didn't know much about consort Taizhen. He only knew that she was the wife of Prince Shou, Li Mao. If it was in the past, he definitely wouldn't take a second look at this woman. But now, the King of Song suddenly had a strong desire. He really wanted to know what kind of woman could cause such a change in the Holy Emperor. Time passed slowly, and the hall was silent. Lu Ting didn't rush him. He just stood at the side and silently waited for the King of Song's opinion. After some time, a long sigh came from the hall. "Help me prepare. I'm going to Prince Shou's residence to meet Jean." "Yes, Your Highness." Lu Ting smiled knowingly. He quickly got up and walked out. Chapter 118. The King of Song had left early in the morning but returned very late. Your Highness, how was it? Lu Ting hurriedly came forward to greet the King of Song as soon as he got off the carriage. In fact, he had never left. Ever since the King of Song set off, he had been waiting at the entrance. But for some reason, Lu Ting felt that the King of Song was restless when he returned. Moreover, he looked very tired, as if he had gone through several battles. The King of Song lowered his head and did not speak. His brows were deeply furrowed. After following the King of Song for so long, this was the first time Lu Ting had seen him like this. Everyone in the surroundings, including the guards and maids, had already dispersed. Prince Shou's matter was no small matter. Lu Ting had already contacted the old butler to prevent anyone from eavesdropping. I can't tell you in detail. Let's talk inside. There was a deep wariness in the King of Song's voice. This cautiousness was something Lu Ting had never encountered before. Lu Ting had thought that the guards and maids near the entrance would be enough to deal with Prince Shou's matter. But it seemed like this matter was much more serious than he had imagined. When they arrived at the King of Song's residence, the main hall was tightly shut. All four corners outside were guarded by experts from the King of Song's residence. The old butler was personally overseeing things outside. Even a mosquito would not be able to fly in. Xianxia said it. When they entered the main hall and there were no outsiders, the King of Song's expression visibly relaxed. In the beginning, he was inarticulate. When I asked him, he kept evading the topic and refused to admit it. If I hadn't watched him grow up and brought out the decree His Majesty gave me this morning, I'm afraid he would never have opened his mouth. What did Prince Shou say? Lu Ting's heart buzzed and he immediately blurted out. The King of Song's brows furrowed even tighter than before. He did not answer me directly. He only kept hinting to me to not pursue the matter of Consort Taizhen. Ah! Lu Ting gasped softly. He looked very surprised, but he quickly reacted. Is Prince Shou unwilling to disobey His Majesty? In the matter of Consort Taizhen, Prince Shou was undoubtedly a victim. The pain of a father stealing his son's wife was something that could not be told to outsiders. However, Prince Shou was a filial son. It was understandable that he advised the King of Song not to pursue this matter. The King of Song shook his head. His expression was solemn as he denied Lu Ting's guess. That's what I thought at first. But that was not the case at all. Although didn't say it directly, he kept hinting to me that this matter might not be as bad as others think, and that he wasn't as wronged as others thought. Ah! Lu Ting exclaimed softly. He was truly shocked. The matter of Consort Taizhen was a case of a monarch stealing his subject's wife and a father stealing his son's wife. This was a fact that all the civil and military officials knew. Moreover, Prince Shou and Consort Taizhen had been together for several years and had always been in love. This was also known by everyone. Precisely because of this, so many officials opposed the Holy Emperor and Consort Taizhen to enter the palace. On this matter, everyone was on Prince Shou's side. What does Prince Shou mean by this? Could there be some secret behind this? Lu Ting asked in surprise. This political storm in the imperial court involved all the civil and military officials of the Tang dynasty and even some minor officials in the prefectures. Many people were indignant and attacked Consort Taizhen, the Yao clan and King Qi who supported Consort Taizhen to enter the palace, and tried to persuade the Holy Emperor. But no one considered Prince Shou. And no one asked Prince Shou. In this matter, everyone thought that Prince Shou was the most serious victim. No matter how harsh one was, no one dared to risk universal condemnation by adding insult to injury, by asking Prince Shou. If not for the fact that the King of Song had received 5 imperial edicts in a row and was ostracized from the imperial court, perhaps even the King of Song wouldn't have thought of paying a visit to the King of Song. I can't think of anything about this matter either. The King of Song shook his head. This was actually one of the deepest doubts in his heart. The matter of Consort Taizhen is very clear. Back then, when Xianxia got married, I even attended his wedding banquet and gave him a pair of jade lions. I really can't think of any other secret behind this matter. Prince Shou's attitude and the taboo words suddenly shrouded this matter in a layer of fog, making it difficult to understand. Your Highness, can you tell me the details of your meeting with Prince Shou? Lu Ting suddenly asked. The King of Song nodded. Lu Ting was his trusted aide. If he couldn't even trust Lu Ting, then there really wasn't anyone he could trust. There were too many strange things about this matter. The King of Song had to find someone to help him think about it. Immediately, the King of Song recounted the entire visit in detail. In between, Lu Ting interjected with a few words, especially asking about Prince Shou's expression and attitude when he spoke. When the King of Song finished, Lu Ting fell into silence for a long time. Your Highness, I'm afraid that we have really overlooked many things regarding the matter of Consort Taizhen. Although I don't know what kind of secret lies behind it, Prince Shou clearly isn't as sorrowful as we thought. Indeed. The King of Song nodded. This was also what he felt. But Your Highness, have you ever thought that even if Prince Shou doesn't wish for Your Highness to pursue the matter, and he himself said that he isn't as hurt and aggrieved as others think? Since that's the case, why didn't he come out to explain it to everyone? His Majesty has always been filial. If he comes out to explain this matter, the resistance His Majesty will face will definitely be much smaller. The resistance Your Majesty will face will definitely be much smaller than now. The King of Song was also stunned. You mean that Xianxia is lying? Are you saying that Xianxia is lying? Impossible. I watched this child grow up. He would never do such a thing. Your Highness, there are only two explanations for this matter. The first is that Prince Shou is lying. What he said isn't the truth. The second is that Prince Shou is indeed telling the truth. The reason why he didn't come out is that someone stopped him from speaking. The second is that Prince Shou is indeed telling the truth. The reason why he didn't come out is that someone stopped him from speaking. Lu Ting took a deep breath. He really didn't want to say this out loud. But Your Highness, have you ever thought that Prince Shou is a member of the royal family and a prince of the empire? Who is it that can stop him and make him shut up? You mean His Majesty? The King of Song's body jolted. His mind buzzed, and a thought flashed across his mind. Li Mao was personally conferred the title of Prince Shou by the Holy Emperor. In terms of standing, even though the King of Song was the imperial uncle, they were on equal footing. Even he and King Qi were incapable of silencing him. Needless to say, others. In the entire Central Plains, there was only one person who was capable of doing this. And that was the unparalleled Holy Emperor, the Son of Heaven. But this was a thought that even the King of Song didn't dare to think about. As long as Prince Shou spoke, His Majesty would face fewer obstructions. But why didn't His Majesty allow him to speak? In that instant, the hall fell silent. Neither of them dared to speak. It's a mess, it's all a mess. The King of Song raised his head. His mind was in a mess. For the first time, the King of Song felt his vision blurring, as though an impenetrable veil was shrouding him. Make preparations, I'll be making a trip to the palace tomorrow. In an instant, countless thoughts flashed across his mind. The King of Song suddenly made up his mind. Your Highness is going to meet the Emperor? Lu Ting was alarmed. At this moment, the Holy Emperor would never meet him. The King of Song's reply surprised Lu Ting. I'm going to meet the consort Taizhen. The sky had already darkened, but the King of Song's actions were faster than Lu Ting had expected. That very night, the King of Song's carriage was already prepared. The gates of the royal palace were closed after nightfall. However, the King of Song was different. As a member of the royal family, the King of Song had special rights. After the gates were closed, he could enter the palace to meet the emperor. Although the carriage was ready, the King of Song did not enter the palace alone. Yin Shan pays his respects to the King of Song, Your Highness. At night, an old man wearing a black robe and a bamboo had appeared on the King of Song's carriage with a black veil hanging from his head. The old man bowed and lowered his head. He seemed to be deliberately hiding his face, not wanting anyone other than the King of Song to see him. At this time, even Lu Ting, whom the King of Song had always trusted, was cast aside. Mr. Yin Shan, you've worked hard. When my father was still alive, we had an agreement not to trouble you for anything unusual. However, there's a reason for this, so I'll have to trouble you to go to the palace with me. The carriage door was open. The King of Song had been waiting at the door for a long time. He looked very respectful. Hee, there's no need to be so polite, Your Highness. Whether it's the King of Song or Your Highness, they're all trustworthy people. Ever since you took over as the King of Song, Your Highness has only used Xianxia a few times. The last time was 6 years ago. Now Your Highness has a need. Would Xianxia dare to disobey? Mr. Xianxia chuckled. His voice was low, hoarse, and there was an indescribable strangeness to it. The King of Song nodded and moved aside. Mr. Xianxia lowered his head and slid into the carriage like a shadow. He did not make any sound. The King of Song did not know much about this, Mr. Xianxia. He only knew that he was an extraordinary person passed down from his father. His father respected him very much. It could even be said that it was beyond respect. The King of Song had once told him not to easily ask for Xianxia's help unless it was absolutely necessary. If not for the 5 imperial edicts, if not for the fact that the matter of Consort Taizhen concerned the entire civil and military court, if not for the fact that Prince Shou's words were too strange, the King of Song would never have asked for Xianxia's help. Let's go. As soon as Song Yunxuan's voice fell, the carriage immediately moved away. The rumbling of carriages could be heard outside, but the interior was deathly silent. Neither King Song nor Mr. Xianxia spoke. After entering the carriage, Mr. Xianxia automatically sat in the furthest corner of the carriage, blending in with the shadows. It was as if he was naturally afraid of sunlight. Boom. Chapter 119. As the carriage entered the Imperial Palace, an invisible pressure spread out from the center of the Imperial Palace in all directions, covering the sky and covering the earth. Any martial artist, even an expert like the King of Song, would feel a sense of pressure. In the carriage, Mr. Xianxia was curled up into a ball, not making a single sound. At such a close distance, even the King of Song wouldn't have been able to sense Mr. Xianxia's presence if he hadn't known beforehand. The royal palace had always been the place with the most experts in the Central Plains. Even describing it as a tiger's lair wasn't enough to describe it. Mr. Xianxia clearly didn't want to attract the attention of the experts in the royal palace. The carriage was even quieter than before. Long. After an unknown period of time, the rumbling of a carriage suddenly sounded from outside. Is that the King of Song ahead? A sharp voice sounded from outside the carriage. That's right. His Majesty has ordered that no one is to meet him today. The King of Song should return. The eunuch's voice was calm. I understand. Gong, please return. I'll be back soon. The King of Song was silent for a moment before replying. Outside the carriage, the eunuch didn't think too much about it. After receiving the King of Song's words, he immediately turned around and left. The rumbling of the carriage soon disappeared outside. Let's go. Without any hesitation, the King of Song listened intently in the carriage. The moment the eunuch disappeared, he immediately ordered the coachman to head in the direction of Yuzhen Palace. A prince had to have a reason to enter the royal palace, and meeting the emperor was the best one. The King of Song knew that he would be rejected, but his goal wasn't to meet the emperor. Mr. Xianxia, we can't stay in the royal palace for too long, nor can we venture too deep. Otherwise, we'll be discovered by the royal consecrators in the royal palace. We don't have much time, so I'll have to trouble you. The King of Song said. The King of Song didn't know much about Mr. Xianxia. They only knew that he had the innate divination art, could read faces, and could measure numbers. Moreover, he also had a long-lost ability, aura divination. It was rumored that different people's heads would emit different qi. The Son of Heaven had the qi of the Son of Heaven. The Minister of Generals had the qi of generals. The young had the qi of vigor. The old had the qi of grayness and decrepitude. Ordinary people can't see these qis, but warlocks who are good at observing qis can see them. Mr. Xianxia's qi observation technique was different. He could observe one's appearance through qi observation. The carriage rumbled on for an unknown period of time. Through the window of the carriage, one could see a palace that resembled colored glass, brightly lit. Mr. Xian, that's true jade. The King of Song was about to tell Mr. Xian that the Yuzhen Palace was up ahead, but he was interrupted. It's done. Your Highness, we can leave now. It was Mr. Xian's voice, coming from the corner. Only the King of Song could hear it. The King of Song was stunned. He originally wanted to tell Mr. Xian that they didn't have much time and wanted Mr. Xian to finish as soon as possible. Unexpectedly, Mr. Xian's qi observation speed was much faster than he had imagined. He had only lifted a corner of the curtain, and it seemed that Mr. Xian had already finished his qi observation. Yes, Mr. The King of Song was taken aback, but he quickly agreed. The carriage rumbled as it left the palace. Just like when it entered, it didn't attract anyone's attention. It was not until they were far away from the imperial palace along Chang'an Street that the carriage stopped by the roadside. Mr. Xian, did you see anything? In the night, the King of Song looked at Mr. Xian with a grave expression, his eyes filled with anticipation. Nothing. Like a curled-up bird, Mr. Xian stretched his body and abruptly sat up in the corner. However, his body was still like a shadow, making it impossible to sense his aura. I can't see anything from his qi. Entering the palace means that he is under the protection of the Son of Heaven. With the protection of the purple Son of Heaven's qi, I can't see anything from him. However, I did see something. What is it? The King of Song's expression tensed up. Previously, His Highness told me that the person he wanted me to see was Consort Taizhen? And how long has she been married to Prince Shou? Mr. Xian raised his head and stared at the King of Song. His gaze was faint, and there was an indescribable feeling in it. That's right. The King of Song was puzzled. Then why is it that what I see is a ball of virgin qi? What? How is this possible? The King of Song was shocked. His first reaction was that Mr. Xian must have made a mistake. Consort Taizhen and Prince Shou were married a few years ago. How could she still be a virgin? Could Sir have made a mistake? This sentence was blurted out. However, the moment the words left his mouth, the King of Song realized that he had said something wrong. Mr. Xian was an expert in qi observation. In this aspect, he would never make a mistake. Moreover, he had already said that Consort Taizhen was protected by the Purple Emperor's qi. Even if Mr. Xian didn't know Consort Taizhen, the Purple Emperor's qi protection had already pointed him in the right direction. Your Highness understands? Mr. Xian laughed and cupped his hands in greeting. His Highness asked me to perform qi observation for Consort Taizhen. I'm done with my task and it's time for me to leave. The general trend cannot be disobeyed. Your Highness, take care. Mr. Xian's last sentence seemed to have a hidden meaning. The moment he finished speaking, he slid out of the carriage like a shadow and disappeared silently, just like how he had appeared. The King of Song had already stretched out his arm, but he retracted it in the end. Mr. Xian's task had been completed, and the rest had nothing to do with him. Consort Taizhen was actually still a virgin. This was something the King of Song hadn't expected. However, Mr. Xian would never lie. What exactly is going on? The King of Song's mind was in a mess. Return to the residence and immediately summon Academic Lu for questioning. In the main hall of the King of Song residence, the King of Song, Lu Ting, and the old butler were gathered together. None of them spoke. Your Highness, could Prince Shou be impossible? Lu Ting originally wanted to say that Prince Shou was impotent, but before he could finish, he was interrupted by the King of Song. Xianxia was no longer a virgin at the age of 14. Many people in the Prince Shou residence know about this. Could it be that His Majesty intentionally placed it with Prince Shou to deceive others? Lu Ting asked again. This was the only answer he could think of. This was the only explanation as to why Prince Shou didn't mind the Sage King forcefully seizing Prince Shou Li Mao's wife. Furthermore, even after 2 years of marriage, Consort Taizhen was still a virgin. His Majesty is the Emperor and his words carry enormous weight. If he likes a woman, no one in the palace would dare to object. Why would he need Prince Shou to cover it up? The King of Song asked. This, Lu Ting was also stunned. If the Emperor fancied a woman, he would be frank and open. There was indeed no need for Prince Shou to cover it up. There was no concubine in the palace who dared to be so jealous. Furthermore, there's another suspicious point. This isn't the first day Consort Taizhen entered the Yuzhen Palace. I heard that His Majesty, the Holy Emperor, has been there several times and even stayed the night there. Since His Majesty likes her so much that he even went to the extent of denouncing the King of Song, why is Consort Taizhen still a virgin? The old butler asked. It was understandable if Lu Ting said that Prince Shou was impotent, but the Holy Emperor was someone who favored the 3 palaces, 6 courtyards, and 72 concubines. He wasn't an abstinent person. It didn't make sense that Consort Taizhen was still a virgin even after entering the palace for more than a month. In the main hall, the brows of the trio were deeply knitted together. Your Highness, I think that we should ask someone about this matter. Lu Ting suddenly chuckled. Who? The King of Song asked. Wang Chong. Lu Ting chuckled. Upon hearing those words, the bodies of the King of Song and the old butler trembled. That's right. Now that they thought about it, all of this was caused by the 3rd son of the Wang clan, Wang Chong. If not for him, the King of Song wouldn't have thought of asking Prince Shou about it. Nor would he have realized that Consort Taizhen was still a virgin. There was no doubt that Wang Chong was the best person to ask. I underestimated him back at the 4 Quarters Embassy. Recalling the past, the King of Song suddenly let out a long sigh. Lu Ting, I'll have to trouble you to make a trip to the Wang clan. Tell him that I have something to ask of him. Now, I can only discuss this matter with him. Lu Ting smiled, clasped his hands, and took his leave. In the courtyard of the Wang clan, a figure was seated motionlessly. Mist was gathering from all directions, shrouding his entire body. Ignoring the commotion in the royal court, Wang Chong was cultivating might of the barbaric god alone in the residence. Endless origin energy was gathering from all directions, seeping into Wang Chong's body, turning into weak origin energy that circulated through his meridians before settling in Wang Chong's dantian, turning into strands of origin energy. This was might. What might of the barbaric god cultivated wasn't just origin energy, but layers upon layers of might. This might was stronger and more explosive. It was completely different from ordinary cultivation techniques. 6th layer. After an unknown period of time, when the might in his body condensed into a circular shape and settled in his dantian, Wang Chong heaved a sigh of relief. The 1st layer of might of the barbaric god was the cultivation of might. But before the 9th layer, what was cultivated wasn't called beast might, but the basic Yuan Qi might. Wang Chong spent several days cultivating day and night before he managed to cultivate Yuan Qi might to the same level as him, Yuan Qi might level 6. Let me test out the power of Yuan Qi might. Wang Chong's eyes focused on a fake mountain in front of him, and there was something special in his eyes. Pang! Wang Chong suddenly punched out, and this punch was more than twice as fast as Wang Chong's previous punches. The fist struck the fake mountain, and it suddenly exploded with a bang. Smoke rose into the air, and it turned into the smallest powder. Hee, not bad. Looking at the fake mountain that turned into powder, Wang Chong laughed. When ordinary martial artists punched out, they would at most smash the fake mountain into countless tiny pieces. But might of the barbaric god was different. Punching the fake mountain with might of the barbaric god. The fake mountain didn't just shatter, but completely disintegrated. This was the greatest difference. Not only so, my strength has increased by quite a bit. Wang Chong looked at a fake mountain that weighed more than 400 Jin not too far away. Stabbing his palm into the bottom of the fake mountain, he exerted his strength. Hong Long Long, this fake mountain, which was impossible for an origin energy tier 6 martial artist to lift, suddenly rose into the air. Wang Chong supported it with a single hand, and he even spun it around in his palm before putting it down. Young Master, Academic Lu Ting is here. Chapter 120. You're finally here. It's much earlier than I expected. Hearing Shanhai and Meng Long's words, Wang Chong's eyes lit up. He smiled as he retracted his cultivation and walked out slowly. Even though Lu Ting didn't say why he was looking for him, Wang Chong knew that it was most likely to consort Taizhen. Even though Wang Chong didn't pay much attention to the affairs of the royal court, he knew that it had been a few days since the King of Song attended the morning court assembly. Wang Chong thought that the King of Song would need at least 10 more days before he would wake up. Yet he came so quickly. It was much earlier than he expected. Wang Chong met Lu Ting in the main hall of the Wang family residence. Lu Ting sat by the tea table with a porcelain tea gu in his hand. He seemed to have been waiting for a moment. Upon seeing Wang Chong enter, Lu Ting's eyes flashed. The 15-year-old Wang Chong walked in wearing a loose gray training robe. His belt was tied casually, and his black hair, sharp eyebrows, and bright eyes made him look extremely handsome. He didn't notice it in the past, but upon seeing Wang Chong this time, Lu Ting suddenly realized that this youngster had a calmness and confidence that none of his peers possessed. It was as though he had a motive for everything he did. Regardless of whether it was the vast Crane Pavilion or the Four Quarters Embassy, no one could treat him as a teenager. In fact, there were times when Lu Ting felt that he was ignorant and unknowingly treated him as a peer whom he could seek guidance from. In the past, this would have been unimaginable for Lu Ting. Gongzi, Lu Ting pays his respects. Lu Ting abruptly stood up and bowed deeply. Lord Lu, why are you bowing? I'm not worthy of it. Wang Chong stood at the entrance and chuckled. This Lu Ting gave him a playful feeling. He thought that he had carried out the matter at the vast Crane Pavilion discreetly, but this Lu Ting seemed to have seen through his plans. Furthermore, regarding the matter of consort Taizhen, Wang Chong was willing to bet that Lu Ting was involved. He was certain that Lu Ting had connections in this matter. Young master is truly a godly person. Consort Taizhen's matter had been guessed correctly by young master. I can accept this gift, I can accept it. Lu Ting could not help but laugh in his heart. Just a moment ago, she had thought that he was mature and steady, like an adult. But at this moment, Wang Chong asked a question he already knew the answer to, like a child. What? I don't remember saying anything. Wang Chong pretended not to understand. At the Four Quarters Embassy, didn't you want to dissuade the King of Song from consort Taizhen? Lu Ting bowed and cooperated. Lord Lu, you must be mistaken. I don't remember dissuading the King of Song. I only asked the King of Song to visit Prince Shou and catch up with him. The smile on Wang Chong's face grew wider. Young master, don't tease me. I was in the wrong previously, I was in the wrong, alright? If Gongzi has any opinions in the future, feel free to voice them. I will try my best to persuade the King of Song. Lu Ting shrugged and admitted defeat with a bitter smile. Ha! Wang Chong laughed. Lu Ting couldn't help but laugh along with him. Some matters were better left untouched. Back at the Four Quarters Embassy, Lu Ting shared the same thoughts as the King of Song. They thought that Wang Chong's persuasion was an act of treason. This was the first trust crisis between them. If there was no trust between them, it would be impossible for them to work together. This was the reason why Wang Chong feigned ignorance and Lu Ting admitted defeat. Only by breaking through the barrier in their hearts could they truly continue to cooperate. Lord Lu, remember what you said. Wang Chong pointed a finger at Lu Ting with a smile. Of course, a gentleman's words cannot be taken back. Chong Gongzi has already proven himself with your capabilities. How could Lu Ting dare to say anything else? Lu Ting said. This wasn't a compliment, but Lu Ting's heartfelt words. Regardless of whether it was the matter at the vast Crane Pavilion or the matter regarding consort Taizhen, they weren't small matters. Even though Wang Chong was young, the wisdom and insight he displayed on such a huge matter left even Lu Ting in awe. Yao Guangyi's defeat was the best proof of this. Chong Gongzi, due to the matter regarding consort Taizhen, the King of Song has been ordered by the Holy Emperor to recuperate at home. This matter is of utmost importance, so I'll have to trouble Gongzi to accompany me to the King of Song's residence. His Highness has been waiting for a long time. Lu Ting said sincerely. I'll be troubling Lord Lu then. Seeing the severity of Lu Ting's words, Wang Chong didn't turn down the offer. The two of them entered the carriage, and from the king's residence, they headed straight for the King of Song's residence. Wang Chong met the King of Song in the main hall of the King of Song's residence. The king of Song, Lu Ting, the old butler, and Wang Chong made up everyone in the main hall. Other than them, there wasn't a single person in the main hall. The doors to the main hall were tightly shut, and the surroundings, corners, and roofs were filled with experts from the king's residence. Even though this was the first time Wang Chong had entered the king of Song's residence, he could sense the heavy atmosphere. Chong Gongzi, are you going to tell us now? In the main hall, the king of Song, the old butler, Lu Ting, and everyone's gazes were gathered on Wang Chong. The matter regarding King Shou and consort Taizhen had been bothering the king of Song for a very long time. In the king of Song's opinion, there was only one person who knew the secret behind it. That person must be Wang Chong. If not for Wang Chong's reminder, the king of Song would never have thought of meeting King Shou, nor would he have realized that his consort Taizhen, whom he had been married to for several years, was still a virgin. When they first met at the Four Quarters Embassy, the king of Song still blamed Wang Chong for his lack of propriety. But now, he no longer dared to harbor such thoughts. Your Highness, do you think that I know the truth? Just as everyone was anticipating Wang Chong's answer, Wang Chong's reply surprised everyone. You don't know. The king of Song was taken aback. The reason why he invited Wang Chong over was because he was certain that Wang Chong knew the answer. He didn't expect Wang Chong to say that he didn't know either. Your Highness, you overestimate Wang Chong. I would like to know the truth, but I don't know the truth either. Wang Chong shook his head with a bitter smile. The matter of consort Taizhen was a mystery to Wang Chong, be it in his previous life or his current one. In fact, on the way here, when Wang Chong learned from Lu Ting that consort Taizhen was a virgin, Wang Chong was even more shocked than Lu Ting. Regardless of which time-space continuum he was in, it would only mean that consort Taizhen and King Shou didn't have any offspring. However, there was no mention of consort Taizhen being a virgin when she married into the royal palace. How could Wang Chong not be surprised by this outcome? The king of Song was looking forward to hearing an answer from him, but Wang Chong probably didn't know much more than him. Chong Gongzi, that's not what you said on the way here. If you don't know the answer, why would you advise your highness to meet King Shou? Lu Ting frowned as well. As he was in a hurry to bring Wang Chong to meet the king of Song, he didn't pursue the truth along the way. On the other hand, Wang Chong asked him about King Shou and consort Taizhen. Your Highness and Lord Lu have misunderstood. Wang Chong didn't hide anything and revealed the matter of him seeing King Shou. However, Wang Chong changed the matter from his previous life to this life. So, you grew suspicious because you saw King Shou? The disappointment in the king of Song's eyes couldn't be concealed. The greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. He thought that Wang Chong would know the answer, but he didn't expect it to be the case. Your Highness, I thought that this isn't what you are worried about. Wang Chong looked at the king of Song and smiled. Is the truth really important? I just want to know, regardless of what the truth is, has your Highness thought of what you should do next? Hearing Wang Chong's words, the faces of the king of Song and Lu Ting immediately darkened. The old butler looked at Wang Chong with a solemn gaze. Your Highness, regardless of what the truth is, there are only two possibilities. The first is that your Majesty has indeed snatched King Shou's wife, and this is against the moral principles. There's no need to elaborate on this. The second is that there's more to it than meets the eye. This matter isn't what the outside world thinks, where a group snatches the wife of a subject, or a father snatches the wife of his son. If this is the case, has your Highness thought of how you should deal with it? Wang Chong met the gaze of the king of Song and said calmly. These words were extremely bold. In the past, Wang Chong would never dare to say such words. But times had changed. Now, the king of Song had taken the initiative to invite him over. Moreover, the matter of consort Taizhen was of great importance. Not only did it concern the king of Song, but it also concerned Big Uncle and the Wang clan. Wang Chong couldn't just ignore it. Wang Chong was well aware that the king of Song didn't have much time left. Wang Chong, how can you speak to the king of Song in such a manner? Lu Ting reprimanded. It doesn't matter. The king of Song waved his hand, a contemplative look on his face. In the past, if Wang Chong dared to speak to him in such a manner, he would definitely fly into a rage. But now, the 5 imperial edicts had given him a wake-up call and calmed him down. The king of Song wouldn't be the same as he was in the past. Wang Chong, what are you trying to say? The king of Song let out a long sigh, and his figure revealed a sense of exhaustion. Your Highness, the matter of consort Taizhen will be settled in a few days. Your Highness really doesn't have much time left. Wang Chong sighed and changed his tone. His voice was much gentler. It was actually very strange for a teenager to say such words. But whether it was the king of Song, Lu Ting, or the old butler who hadn't spoken much, none of them thought much of it. They seemed to have naturally accepted Wang Chong's attitude. Your Highness, His Majesty's stance on this matter is clear. His Highness and my big uncle led the officials to join hands and oppose His Majesty and Consort Taizhen. In order to protect Consort Taizhen, His Majesty didn't hesitate to issue 5 imperial edicts to expel Your Highness from the royal court. Has Your Highness ever thought that if even Your Highness is like this, what would happen to the other officials? When this matter is settled, what will happen to Consort Taizhen? If Consort Taizhen becomes the empress one day, how do you think she will treat those who opposed her? Wang Chong's words were very gentle, but when they landed in the main hall, they were no less than a heavy bomb. You mean that this matter will implicate the other officials? The king of Song's expression finally changed. He had been hesitating about what to do about this matter. To oppose His Majesty or not. But Wang Chong's words made his heart turn cold. He had been focused on what he should do, but he had neglected what this matter would do to the royal court and the other officials. Impossible! His Majesty definitely wouldn't dare to do this. That's half of the officials. The king of Song's face paled. What do you think, Your Highness? Wang Chong let out a long sigh in his heart. If the king of Song didn't change his attitude, this wasn't a question of whether it would happen or not. It was something that would definitely happen. No one understood why the Holy Emperor would be so protective of a woman, but this was the truth. Consort Taizhen's place in the Holy Emperor's heart was far more important than anyone could imagine. As for the reason, it was destined to be a mystery, and there was no way to explain it to outsiders. The main hall was quiet. The king of Song's eyes were wide open, and cold sweat was dripping from his forehead. Lu Ting's expression was definitely not any better. Looking at Wang Chong, Lu Ting looked like he had seen a ghost. This young man's insight into the affairs of the world was far beyond his imagination. While he and the king of Song were still trying to figure out the secrets of King Shou and Consort Taizhen, Wang Chong had already considered the possible consequences of this matter. At this moment, Lu Ting couldn't help but feel fortunate that he had noticed Wang Chong in the vast crane pavilion and invited Wang Chong over. Otherwise, no one knew when they would wake up to reality. Just the thought of the consequences of having half of the officials involved in this matter left even Lu Ting feeling fearful. At this moment, the main hall was deathly silent, and only heavy breathing could be heard. Upon seeing this sight, Wang Chong nodded his head slightly. It was already impressive that the king of Song and the others were able to realize this point. At least his efforts in the Four Quarters Embassy weren't in vain. Has Your Highness ever thought about it? If half of the officials were to be demoted or even exiled to other prefectures, with King Qi and the Yao clan in charge of the royal court, what would happen next? It's fine if it's the Yao clan. Old Master Yao still wants to save face. But what about King Qi? Given King Qi's personality and style, do you think that he would let go of such an opportunity? If the military affairs of the royal court were to fall into the hands of selfish people like the Yao clan and King Qi, what do you think will happen in the future? Wang Chong said earnestly. Only at this moment did Wang Chong voice out the words of advice he had been harboring in his heart. In the Four Quarters Embassy, Wang Chong didn't say these words, and he couldn't say them. But now, the king of Song had accepted 5 imperial edicts and was idling at home. The weight of his words was far greater than before. The complexion of king of Song turned even more awful. The old butler and Lu Ting's complexion didn't look too good either. What Wang Chong said was something that they had never considered before. What do you think I should do? The king of Song finally raised his head and stared at Wang Chong. Looking at this upright third son of Wang Yan, the king of Song no longer dared to underestimate him due to his age and appearance. At this moment, the king of Song had truly regarded Wang Chong as a little strategist. And one that carried a lot of weight. Hee, I'll have to ask your highness about this. On one side is a private affair, and on the other side is a national affair. Which does your highness think is more important? Wang Chong smiled. He knew that the king of Song had already made up his mind. But are you going to disregard the relationship between an official and a ruler? The king of Song asked in return. Then, which does your highness think is more important, the reputation of an official or the national affairs of the Tang dynasty? Wang Chong said fearlessly. Sigh. The king of Song let out a long sigh. A deep sense of defeat suddenly welled up in his heart. He already knew what he should do. Your highness, you don't have to blame yourself. In this matter, Prince Shou wasn't harmed, Consort Taizhen wasn't harmed, and His Majesty wasn't harmed either. Isn't that enough? To benefit the country, one's life and death is at stake. How can one avoid it because of misfortune or good fortune? As long as it's beneficial to the Tang dynasty and the country, why should your highness care about personal gains and losses? Wang Chong comforted him. Wang Chong respected the king of Song from the bottom of his heart. If an ordinary person were to encounter the king of Song's situation, they would probably have surrendered long ago. Only an upright person like the king of Song would feel tormented and struggle for so long. To benefit the country, one's life and death is at stake. How can one avoid it because of misfortune or good fortune? Well said, well said. The king of Song let out a long sigh and returned to his original appearance. Chapter 121. The king of Song sighed in his heart. What was done could not be undone. The current situation was no longer one where he could do whatever he wanted. In the court, the Holy Emperor's 5 imperial edicts had already excluded him from the scope of court discussions. Moreover, all the civil and military officials would follow his lead in this matter. Now that half of the court officials were vehemently against it, His Majesty and Consort Taizhen would definitely blame it on him. No matter what he did, he could not change the situation now. The main hall was quiet, and the atmosphere was heavy. Even without the King of Song's explanation, everyone knew what situation the King of Song was in. The Emperor was not joking. In the current situation, even if the King of Song changed his attitude, it would be difficult for him to return to the court and regain his previous position. The victory of King Qi and the Yao family was inevitable. What I'm worried about now is the officials in the court. I hope His Majesty will not demote half of the officials because of this matter. The King of Song's voice was full of worry. Your Highness, is it possible to meet the Holy Emperor? With His Majesty's trust in you, there might be a chance to salvage this matter. The old steward, who had not spoken much, had a thoughtful look in his eyes. It's impossible. His Majesty is really angry about this matter. All of us have underestimated His Majesty's position on this matter. Now, he will definitely not meet me. And in the court, King Qi and the Yao family will definitely do everything they can to not give me this chance. The King of Song said. A trace of helplessness flashed in the old steward's eyes. Although he was unparalleled in cultivation, he was not good at this kind of court strategy. Moreover, if I suddenly change my attitude, how will the officials in the court view me? How will His Majesty view me? How will the court view me? Even if I suddenly support His Majesty, it may not be as effective as you think. The King of Song sighed. Lu Ting was also speechless. There was no turning back. This was the situation the King of Song was facing now. No matter what he did, the blame would be placed on him. Now, even Lu Ting couldn't think of a solution. One wrong step in the imperial court would lead to many wrong steps. Even though they foresaw that half of the civil and military officials would be implicated, even though they foresaw that King Qi and the Yao clan would rise to power in the imperial court, they could do nothing. Is there really no other way? Lu Ting said unwillingly. Actually, regarding this matter, Your Highness doesn't necessarily have to express your support for Consort Taizhen. After an unknown amount of time, just as everyone was in a daze, Wang Chang's voice rang in everyone's ears. His voice was clear and unrestrained. At this time, it gave people a feeling of being able to see the sun through the clouds. The three of them were shocked and looked at Wang Chong. Wang Chong, do you have any good ideas? The King of Song said. Indeed, Chong Gongzi. You don't have to hide anything in front of the King of Song. Just say what's on your mind. Lu Ting encouraged as well. Your Highness, actually not objecting is already supporting it. Wang Chong said. As the saying goes, the onlooker sees the game more clearly. The world is not a game of black and white. However, I'm afraid that this is far from enough. Lu Ting said hesitantly. Lord Lu, do you still not understand? The reason why His Majesty is angry isn't because of the King of Song's objection. Rather, it's because of the King of Song's objection that His Majesty is in a difficult position. Consort Taizhen will be faced with great opposition. If Consort Taizhen can successfully enter the palace, if the opposition isn't so great, do you think that His Majesty will care even if there are objections? Wang Chong said with a smile. The eyes of everyone in the hall lit up upon hearing his words. Even the King of Song was surprised. He suddenly realized that not summoning Wang Chong in on the matter of Consort Taizhen was his biggest mistake. This child's way of thinking seemed to be different from others. In the same matter, he could always find something that others couldn't. If that was all, it would be fine. However, after careful consideration, Wang Chong's words were reasonable and often gave people a feeling of being enlightened. Go on. The King of Song was much more spirited. He looked at Wang Chong with an expectant look. He was getting more and more curious about this youngest son of the Wang family. Yes, Your Highness. Wang Chong bowed in response and continued. His calm and composed expression was so infectious that people couldn't help following his train of thought. Your Highness has great rallying power in the imperial court. With a summon, the officials will gather. This is also the reason why His Majesty is dissatisfied with you. However, if Your Highness suddenly changes your attitude from vehement opposition to silence, the officials in the imperial court will definitely be puzzled and curious. At that time, as long as Your Highness says that there's more to the matter of Consort Taizhen and the truth isn't what everyone thinks. At that time, given Your Highness's influence, it will definitely cause a huge reaction in the imperial court. As long as there's hesitation in their hearts, the opposition will definitely not be so intense. As long as half of those who oppose change their attitude, the matter of Consort Taizhen entering the palace will be settled and unstoppable. As long as the opposition in the imperial court isn't so intense and resolute. As long as the resistance isn't so great, His Majesty will definitely not pursue this matter. Even if there are people who oppose it, he won't care. This way, the reputation of the officials will be preserved and at the same time, the officials in the imperial court will be protected. Wang Chong said. In the great hall, the King of Song and the old butler looked at each other in shock. The affairs of the imperial court were unpredictable. One wrong step would lead to many wrong steps. The complexity and risks involved were not something that outsiders could understand. The King of Song had thought that Wang Chong was more or less unfamiliar with the affairs of the imperial court. However, listening to his words, he didn't sound like a child. Instead, he sounded like an old official who had been in the imperial court for decades. Moreover, after careful consideration, Wang Chong's method had considered all aspects. Even the King of Song had to admit that this was currently the best method. This child is really too shocking. The King of Song's heart thundered. A 15-year-old child could be so experienced. If he hadn't heard Wang Chong say this with his own ears, the King of Song wouldn't have believed it. Previously, he had heard from the Wang family that Yao Guangyi's matter was entirely due to Wang Chong's efforts. The King of Song had more or less felt that the Wang family was exaggerating and purposely trying to promote this junior. But now, the King of Song believed that the Wang family had indeed produced a Qilin son. The impression that Wang Chong gave him was even deeper than that of his eldest and second brothers. As these thoughts flashed across the King of Song's mind, he quickly turned to look at Lu Ting. Lord Lu, what do you think of this matter? Your Highness, pardon my bluntness, but this is probably the best solution for now. Lu Ting pondered for a moment before speaking seriously. It's a pity. Even if the officials in the imperial court are protected, it will be difficult for Your Highness to return to the imperial court. At the very least, It will be impossible for you to do so within half a year. By then, the matter will have already been settled. King Qi and the Yao clan have already taken over the Ministry of War and the Ministry of Punishments from your highness. The Ministry of War and the Ministry of Punishments were the two departments with the most authority in the imperial court. The Ministry of Punishments was one thing, but the Ministry of War was of utmost importance. The King of Song relied on his immense influence in the military to gain the respect of the imperial court and the right to speak. If the Ministry of War were to fall into King Qi's hands, even the officials in the imperial court would be safe. The King of Song would lose. Furthermore, given King Qi's personality, he would never let go of military authority once he grasped it. The King of Song's subordinates in the military would probably be cleaned out in a short period of time and replaced with his own men. The military is a matter of national importance and cannot be ignored. If the Ministry of War were to fall into the hands of someone like King Qi, the empire would truly be in deep trouble. Although I am unwilling, it is best to choose the lesser of two evils. This is the only way this matter can be. The King of Song looked to the heavens and sighed, his heart filled with indignation. Wang Chong looked at the two of them in silence. Wang Chong had already done his best to consort Taizhen's affairs. However, Wang Chong hesitated for a moment before speaking up. Your Highness, in truth, King Qi might not have won this matter. King Qi might not be able to seize the authority of the Ministry of War. These words caused the King of Song to tremble. He had been trying his best to maintain his composure, but upon hearing these words, he could no longer hold back. What should I do? The King of Song asked. His expression was one of unprecedented respect. To eliminate the influence of this matter, there is actually a way. Everything only needs one person. As long as you can get this person's consent, everything can be resolved. Wang Chong said, Who is it? The King of Song, the old butler, and Lu Ting asked simultaneously. The 5 imperial edicts were an insurmountable chasm. The three of them found it hard to believe that Wang Chong could still help the King of Song return to his original position. Consort Taizhen. Wang Chong smiled and spat out a name. Everything is because of Consort Taizhen. Only the one who tied the bell can untie it. If the King of Song wishes to return to the royal court, he will need Consort Taizhen's help. The hall was quiet. The three of them looked at Wang Chong with their eyes wide open. They felt as if they were looking at a lunatic. Crazy. Completely crazy. If not for Wang Chong's previous performance, the three of them would have cried out. The biggest obstacle to Consort Taizhen entering the palace was the King of Song. The two of them were enemies. She hated the King of Song to the core. How could she help her enemy? Wang Chong actually wanted Consort Taizhen to speak for the King of Song. This was simply wishful thinking. Even the craziest lunatic would not dare to say such a thing. Looking at everyone's shocked and incredulous gazes, Wang Chong laughed inwardly. He felt an indescribable sense of accomplishment. Right now, in the entire Central Plains, if there was one person who could change Consort Taizhen's attitude and make her not hate the King of Song but help the King of Song instead, only one person could do it. Chapter 122. Wang Chong, if you can do it, I really admire you. It's already good enough that Consort Taizhen doesn't hate us. How could she possibly help us? Wang Chong, if you can even do such a thing, I can promise you one thing. No matter what it is, as long as I can do it, I'll definitely promise you. No matter what it is, as long as I can do it, I'll definitely promise you. The three of them looked at Wang Chong said, obviously feeling that it was impossible. How could Wang Chong dare to think of letting his enemy speak for him? The King of Song had seen all kinds of people in the imperial court. There were people who begged their enemies for forgiveness, but not only did they beg their enemies not to hate you, but to help you instead, there wasn't a single one. Even the Yao family, who had always been known for their wisdom, didn't dare to say such words. As expected, Wang Chong was still young and impetuous, which was why he would say such words. Wang Chong laughed. He could clearly see the expressions of the three of them. Without a doubt, the three of them felt that it was impossible. Even Lu Ting, who had the most favorable impression of him and trusted him the most, felt that Wang Chong's words were too shocking and unlikely to be realized. However, Wang Chong didn't refute it. Facts spoke louder than words. No matter how much he said, it wouldn't be as convincing as making it a reality. Your Highness, there's nothing in this world that I'm completely sure of. I can't guarantee that I'll definitely be able to do it. However, if Your Highness doesn't mind, I can try my best. However, if I want to do this, I'll need Your Highness's full help. Wang Chong said, That's not a problem at all. Do whatever you want to do. If you need anything, just tell me or Lord Lu. I'll give you my full support. The King of Song said with a smile. His expression was relaxed. Clearly, he didn't believe that Wang Chong could succeed. Because of this, he didn't feel burdened and simply let him do it. Thank you, Your Highness. Wang Chong bowed. He wasn't being polite about this matter. If he wanted to do what he said, he needed the help of the King of Song. After leaving the King of Song's mansion, Wang Chong sat in the carriage, a contemplative look in his eyes. Although he had made a solemn vow in front of the King of Song, Wang Chong knew that it would not be easy to achieve this. Spilled water could not be retrieved. Words that had been spoken could not be taken back. The King of Song had objected so fiercely before. Moreover, he had gathered the ministers to oppose him. It was basically impossible to consort Taizhen to have a good impression of him and change her attitude toward him all of a sudden. However, this matter was not absolute. Wang Chong sat in the carriage, his heart in turmoil. He remembered something about consort Taizhen. At this moment, everyone was full of criticism toward consort Taizhen. Their understanding of her was probably limited to a woman, or a calamity that brought disaster to the country's people. As for the real situation, no one understood it. Only Wang Chong knew that this woman wasn't just Princess Consort Shou, or a woman that could be summed up. Regardless of which parallel universe she was in, this woman's beauty was renowned throughout history. She was definitely one of the most beautiful women in the thousands of years of history of the Central Plains. For a woman to be able to leave her mark in history just by relying on her beauty, one could imagine how beautiful this woman was. However, other than Wang Chong, no one had noticed this point yet. Other than her beauty, Wang Chong also knew that consort Taizhen had a hobby, and that was to love poetry. In fact, it far exceeded the scope of ordinary love. Consort Taizhen was especially fond of talented poets. In the future, after entering the palace, Consort Taizhen would often summon those famous poets and listen to them recite their poems. She would guide them and bestow them with large amounts of gold and silver. As for those poets who were struggling to make ends meet, Consort Taizhen would often bestow them with an additional sum of money. Thus, among the poets of the Tang dynasty, Consort Taizhen's reputation had always been the best. Consort Taizhen loved poetry, and her love for poetry had reached an unimaginable level. When she came across a good poem, Consort Taizhen would often fall in love with it. She wouldn't let go of it for even a moment, and she would bring it with her even when she slept. There were a few lavishly decorated chests in her room. They weren't used to store gold and silver, but the poems she loved. At the same time, like other women, Consort Taizhen also had her own thoughts. Consort Taizhen loved poems with talent, and if these talented poems could praise her a little, Consort Taizhen would like it very much. She would often bestow additional gifts. Due to the pursuit of martial arts, the poetry of this world wasn't very developed. In his previous life, when he heard that Consort Taizhen loved poetry, Wang Chong already had some ideas, but he never had the chance to do so. If I can take out that poem, perhaps this matter will be very successful. A thought flashed through Wang Chong's mind, and he recalled a poem. This world actually had many aspects that were completely different from the Tang dynasty in Wang Chong's impression. For example, there was no Li Bai and there was no Du Fu. Although there were many popular poems and many famous poets, in terms of standard, they were far from the level in Wang Chong's impression. At the very least, Wang Chong knew that many poems had a weight that completely crushed the poets in this world. I'll use that poem. I'll know if I can achieve the effect after trying it out. There was nothing in this world that was 100% certain. However, in Wang Chang's mind, at least this heavyweight poem could completely change the impression that Consort Taizhen had and ease the relationship between her and the King of Song. After returning to the residence, Wang Chong didn't waste any time. He immediately picked up his brush and wrote down the Song of Purity and Peace. Although he had a lot of clever ideas, it had to be said that Wang Chong's handwriting wasn't very good. Although he had tried his best, the words were still crooked, and it could only be said that it was barely readable. From this aspect, Wang Chong was quite in line with his identity as the son of a general. Fortunately, although the words weren't very good, the content of the poem was still very weighty. It's about time. Looking at the content on the Xian paper, Wang Chong heaved a long sigh of relief. His forehead was covered in sweat. Picking up a brush and wielding a saber were two completely different things. Looking at his work, Wang Chong nodded his head. Then he grabbed a large seal by the side and imprinted Li Chunqi's seal on it. This was the seal of the King of Song. It was something that Wang Chong had requested from Lu Ting at the last minute before he left. The King of Song was rather generous. After asking Lu Ting to retrieve his seal, he passed it to Wang Chong. Wang Chong blew on it. After the ink on the paper dried, he stuffed it into a large envelope. After writing a few lines of words on the envelope, he stamped the seal of the King of Song residence on it. Menglong, your subordinate is here. Menglong answered the call and entered respectfully. Bring this letter to the royal palace and pass it to Consort Taizhen. Also, pass this seal to Lord Lu Ting. Wang Chong pointed to the letter and seal on the table. The current Holy Emperor had built a Yuzhen palace in the royal palace, and Consort Taizhen resided there. It was impossible for an ordinary person to deliver a seal to the royal palace. However, Wang Chong knew that given the identity of the King of Song, as long as he flashed the seal on the letter, it would be successfully delivered. Whether I can help the King of Song or not will depend on the effects of this letter, Wang Chong thought. After handing over the letter and seal, Wang Chong heaved a long sigh of relief. After dealing with the King of Song, Wang Chong turned his attention back to his cultivation. His Might of Barbaric God 1 Dan, Origin Energy Force, 6 Dan was compatible with his current cultivation realm. If he wanted to reach higher realms, he would have to reach Origin Energy Tier 7. In other words, it was impossible for him to raise his Might of Barbaric God anymore. However, it was fortunate that once he mastered Might of Barbaric God, Wang Chong would be able to absorb Origin Energy from the outside world. Compared to before, the speed of cultivation was completely incomparable. If I want to reach higher realms, I can't stay here any longer. Wang Chong quietly said to himself as he turned his head to look through the window at the faintly discernible mountains beyond the capital. In terms of origin energy, the forest was undoubtedly much more abundant than the city. If Wang Chong wanted to raise his cultivation realm to higher realms and bring out the full might of Barbaric God, he would have to leave the capital and enter the forest. However, I can't rush this matter. Wang Chong stretched out his right index finger and lightly tapped on the table as his mind whirred. Subconsciously, Wang Chong thought of the Eastern Islands' female assassin. With the specter steps and outstanding assassination skills, that female assassin was no different from a specter, making it hard to guard against her. If not for Wang Chong's scheming against her back then, he would have long been dead. The capital was currently heavily guarded, so naturally, that female assassin wouldn't dare to come. However, if he were to leave the city and enter the complicated environment of the forest, it would be hard to say what would happen. That kind of environment was extremely advantageous to assassins. Shen Hai, Meng Long, Arloja, and Ablanidin might not be able to protect him. Perhaps, even a few of them might die. If that was the case, Wang Chong's heart would ache. Sharpening the axe won't delay the work of cutting wood. If I want to resolve this matter, I'll have to find a powerful bodyguard. Wang Chong rubbed his forehead, feeling a slight headache coming on. His mother and little sister were in the Wang residence, so he couldn't bring the guards in the residence with him. Thus, Wang Chong could only find a way to find a few formidable experts from the outside. Wang Chong racked his brains to recall the experts he knew. I've got it. A thought flashed across Wang Chong's mind, and he suddenly recalled something. If he wanted to find an expert, there was no better and more convenient way than to hire an expert. Wang Chong knew of an extremely formidable expert who was hired. However, it was a pity that this person had an eccentric temper and his exorbitant price. On top of that, he had an unattractive appearance and shabby clothes. Thus, no one paid him any heed. It was only a few years later that this expert rose to fame due to a coincidence. It was only then that many people realized how formidable this person was. However, by then, he had already been recruited into the residence of a king of the royal family as his personal guard. However, it hadn't been long since he appeared. Given his temper, his exorbitant price, and his indifferent attitude, no one would have noticed him other than Wang Chong. Ha! It's him! Welcome to Legends of Cultivation audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.